Hello and welcome to my brief introduction on Balinese culture. This is Annika Shah, and today we're going to learn quite a bit. The goal of this business venture is so that our partnership is able to live in business and personal life in Bali, Indonesia for 2 years, capable of communicating and thriving in a different cultural context. After training is complete, our partners should feel confident in understanding culture and the keys of communication within this culture. Jumping right in, we're going to take a look at Hofstede's analysis of Indonesia just to get a really broad picture of what we're looking at. So, looking at collectivist versus individualistic, we see that the score is 14. This means that this country values harmony and working together. The power distance is 78, which is a very high score, meaning that the power is unevenly distributed. Taking a look at masculinity versus femininity, we see a 46%, meaning that the women are they act like women while the men act like men. Uncertainty avoidance is pretty high here. We have a 48. This means that they are unlikely to kind of go outside of their comfort zones. Long-term orientation is another high score of 62, meaning that people are not very likely to travel outside of their own country. Unlike what we're used to in America, Indonesia scores a 38% for indulgence. Moving on for some background, Indonesia is still using the caste system, meaning that people are pretty unevenly distributed. There's royalty, then there's less than royalty, and so on and so forth down the chain. I want to mention how this country is polychronic, meaning that they're going to value time a lot differently than what Americans are used to. So, looking at some basic etiquette, we want to pay attention to our host in these situations a lot. So, if you notice that they're taking off their shoes, or if they're indicating for you to sit down or indicating for you to start eating, that's your cue to go ahead and do those things. You don't really want to go out of your way and search yourself in these situations. You really want to be paying attention to what is being expected of you. Giving and receiving gifts is pretty darn popular in Bali, Indonesia, so just pay attention to some kind of guidelines for gifts that you should be giving. Don't really gift alcohol, pork, or beef products. This even includes leather. These things are not really looked at as appropriate for gifts in Indonesian culture. So, just looking at a business perspective, take your time and be very polite. It's considered uneducated to be really loud and noisy, so there's no reason for that. Just be patient and try to maintain harmony in most business interactions. So, just taking a look at some basic Balinese common phrases, these are some really good things to kind of get a grip on and expect to kind of know a little bit of basics from. I'm not going to spend the time of going over all of these, but pay attention to the pronunciation. It is quite different to what we're used to. When ordering in a restaurant, a lot of these dishes are just going to be prepared for how they're prepared. So if you like coffee with sugar or no sugar, in Indonesian culture, it's typically added. So make sure to mention you don't want sugar, or you're sensitive to spice, or you're sensitive to salt while ordering. Oh, this is pretty funny. My slides got moved around. So as you can see, here's some more important words to know. These words are just going to help with your communication just by understanding their language and how they pronounce things. So, nonverbal communication is almost just as important as a verbal communication. So, let's take a look at how in Bali, Indonesia, nonverbal communication is considered. So, silence is very polite. This means that you're really considering what you want to say and how you want to reply. This means that you paid close attention to your speaker. A little hurtful to our left-handed people out there. The left hand is considered fairly unclean. It's utilized for cleaning things. So if you're shaking someone's hand, touching someone's shoulder, exchanging items, or eating, refrain from using your left hand and try to do so with your right hand. This is going to be a much more respectful way of doing things. So feet are considered pretty lowly, while someone's head is considered fairly sacred. So avoid touching someone's head, avoid pointing your feet at people, Both of these things are fairly rude and definitely overstepping personal space and boundaries. Um, Contact between, I guess, a male and female gender is considered kind of rude in public or outlandish, so avoid touching. For verbal communication, this is going to be quite different than what we're used to in the United States. While the United States is very direct in our communication, Bali, Indonesia is going to take a much more indirect route. This means that it might be hard to get a straightforward answer from someone. They're focusing on face work and saving face. They don't want to offend people. They want to maintain harmony. In indirect cultures, it's generally pretty hard for them to say no. So you really want to double check your answers, the directions, ask your questions in multiple ways to make sure that they're communicating really well. This culture values quiet, soft voices and thinks that being loud is rude and kind of uneducated. Here are some citations. I really hope that you guys look into these. There's so much more information out there, there's so much more to learn. Thank you very much for taking part in my cultural communications class. I hope you learned so much, and I really hope that you look forward to communicating with this new country.